Thanks for being here. Subscribe to Cheating Stories Best, so you don't miss new stories.
The movie industry is not one of life's easy paths from which one can easily stray. With the wife of our present-day hero will happen approximately the same. Enjoy the movie! Chase Burrows walked onto the set with a fair amount of trepidation. He had been thinking about his wife Maria Burrows all the previous night and had trouble falling asleep. Today's afternoon shoot was set to captivate Hollywood, talking heads and celebrities for weeks after the episode aired, so to speak, city chatter. But Chase wasn't just there to watch his wife perform and provide her with moral support. The couple got married shortly after meeting on the set of the film Shut Up the Cop. The film was not very successful, but in addition to meeting Maria, his future stunning wife, the role launched Chase's career as an in-demand leading man. The first 2 years of their marriage were, in fact, very challenging by normal standards. Chase was away more often than he was home. He was constantly worried that his beautiful partner would go astray. Hollywood does this to people a lot, and he was naturally afraid of it. Scrupulousness, monogamy, fidelity, and especially long-term relationships were all too rare and most often ignored in the land of glitter and shine. On top of that, Chase knew he was playing with a lit match, if not a keg of dynamite when it came to his wife. Her family had money, thanks to this and her appearance. She was rarely denied anything. Even at an early age, Maria was the apple of her father's eye and was spoiled beyond belief. The fact that she received these privileges before arriving in Hollywood was not an easy ordeal, but Chase loved her and hoped for the best. In addition, the newlyweds managed to get several small roles, and her agent quickly got her noticed and began to appear in the media. But the first 2 years, despite all the concerns, were not disappointing. Not only had they overcome the initial difficulties, but by all accounts, both publicly and privately, they were still in a honeymoon state. One day, Maria sat up in bed after a marathon round of explosive intim and asked Chase what he thought about starting a family. His first thought was surprised that she even asked. She's not used to little things like permission. Chase liked the idea. Creating another little human with this female goddess was something everyone dreams of. Matthew was born 4.5 months ago, but Chase's relationship with Maria changed dramatically the month she found out she was pregnant. She acted loving and genuinely cared for her husband, with one exception, and Chase saw it for what it was, acting. The couple had a long break in their current project. The second season of Despair Island wrapped up this week. They were the #1 rated in their Tuesday time slot, and the Emmys were quite plausible for Chase, the character of John Franklin, and his wife Maria, the character of Laura Franklin. The other main character was Sven. In the series, he was just Sven, but the actor's name was Duck Bronson. When Chase first got the call about Despair Island, he was battling traffic on Highway 101 on his way home from Studio City for his wife's birthday. He had big plans, but as usual, the chaotic Southern California lifestyle got in the way. Almost at the same time, Maria's agent was talking to her on the phone, oddly enough to ask if she would be interested in playing the female lead opposite her real-life husband. Both were ecstatic with the good news when Chase arrived home, but were unable to dine at Cha Francois. Instead, DoorDash delivered their favorite Chinese food and 2 bottles of good wine in their glory. DoorDash returned 2 hours later with a ton of caramel desserts and cakes. Chase loved caramel, especially licking it off his wife's body without clothes. Working on a real set, which was either actually on a small rugged island or was designed to be so, was very challenging for Maria during her pregnancy. Chase worried about her and often rubbed her back or legs sympathetically at night. Chase asked, then almost demanded, that the directors keep her on a flat hard surface as often as possible. Unfortunately, this became increasingly difficult as the writers escalated the ardent secret romance between Laura Franklin and Sven. They just needed to sneak away somewhere, and not into a makeshift tent. With their busy work schedules, Maria and Chase rarely had time to discuss what they thought about the plot points in the series. Chase, of course, didn't like how the big guy seemed to treat his wife like a man, but everything about their scenes was very professional and on point. There wasn't much to complain about except the nagging feelings in Chase's head. The week of Matthew's birthday provided a much-needed break for the couple. Apart from his birthday itself, family and friends were politely asked to give them some time to be with the child. Both sets of parents knew they would see their grandson often, given Maria and Chase's line of work. The only constant obstacle was the couriers showering the couple with flowers and other gifts. Even Duck Bronson sent flowers and a sentimental card the following week. Chase returned to work during the first week, and into the second, Chase began to feel restless. He couldn't explain what was happening. The people he worked with every day seemed to treat him differently. He was asked to share photos of the little toddler, and Chase happily shared, but something was wrong. There were whispers, and they stopped whenever someone noticed Chase in close proximity. Several times, he even took out his phone and turned the camera to see if there was anything on his face or nose. The worries and whispers died down almost completely over the next 2 weeks leading up to Maria's return and the long-awaited conclusion of the season. It seemed to Chase that everything was back to normal. Now, he stood behind the director's desk again, ready to watch his wife give what he half-hoped, half-feared, would be a stellar performance. There are already rumors at the studio that the programs have expired. None of them have been confirmed. Additionally, Season 2 had a lot of buzz about infidelity and the general theme of cuckolding. Directors and producers dismissed the rumors as mere Hollywood gossip, although none of them denied the rumors. Failure after just 2 seasons would be very bad for all concerned. The actors would be subject to gossip, and the studio would likely suffer losses. While Chase was a little anxious, Maria was nervous. She hinted not so subtly that it would have been better if Chase wasn't on set for the scene. Nonsense, he told her unequivocally. He told her that he loved her, that she was his wife, and what it would be like if he wasn't there to support her. He added that they are both in the business, and it's all part of their chosen profession. She told him that she might not be up to the task, knowing that her husband was off camera watching her passionately kiss, hug, and essentially roll around in the warm sand for several minutes, almost without clothes, with another man. Duck was wearing only boxers, and she was wearing a rather shabby bikini which she took from the suitcase of one of the unbled women back in the first season. Unlike the mostly vanilla kissing scenes leading up to the season finale, this scene was meant to be very nicely and passionate. The set would be closed to the main crew only in case there was a wardrobe malfunction, but Maria's nervousness was not due to fear that one of her breasts might pop out of the suit. She was concerned about how realistic the performance might look. While she was trying to perform the performance of her life for her job, Maria knew that she would have to perform a separate and very different performance for her husband and the others present who knew her well. Of course, Maria had talked to Duck privately about the scene once during her first week at home with the newborn, and to make sure she got her message across to his thick skull, 2 days before their scene, "Don't ruin my marriage, Duck," she told him, surprisingly without emotion. "No macho, and try to make it look uncomfortable and comfortable at the same time. You understood me?" Duck did understand, at least to some extent. Maria knew she had explained herself as best she could, and now she had to help him remember. As they rode along the beach, Duck might look like a Scandinavian Neanderthal, but she also knew he was pretty smart. His large stature and Nordic features made him much more suitable for a role in Game of Thrones than for Desolation Island. The 7-minute scene, which was cut down to 2.5 after editing, went off without a hitch. Maria breathed a sigh of relief and thought, "God bless," when the director said cut. She didn't even look at Duck as she hurried away from the camera, wanting to quickly get to her husband to hug him. But any thoughts or actions by anyone on set were suppressed, and the executive producer, other producers, and directors gathered for a post-production meeting. Maria found her husband's hand as they gathered in the shade of the folding tent. Rothenstein addressed the group directly. "Great scene, Maria and Duck," he began. "I have news for all of you. The rest of the cast and crew will be informed by the end of today. You've all heard the rumors. Unfortunately, they turned out to be true. Last night, the TV channel decided that this was our last season." There were whoops, gasps, and grunts as S tried to regain the group's attention. "I know this is disappointing," S continued, "for me too. But hey, it's show business. Executives don't see enough longevity in the script as it stands now to produce 12 new episodes for a 3rd season. They want to go out on a high note. Right now, we have work to do to bring the series finale to a close. I have rewritten scripts here for tomorrow's filming. There are major edits for John Franklin, Laura Franklin, and several others. Duck Bronson has about 2 minutes of dialogue changes. I expect you all to remain professional, and for the main characters to spend this time reviewing their scripts. I want to finish my work tomorrow or the day after tomorrow at the latest. So, S said in conclusion, I have invited a caterer to provide you with evening meals in your rooms. So, order whatever you want. See you on set tomorrow morning. Maria listened attentively to S and squeezed Chase's hand more and more tightly. She understood what this could mean for her husband's career. She had no idea how bad the next 24 to 48 hours would actually be. Chase's story, my day, was turning to expletive so quickly and in ways I couldn't imagine. The love scene between Duck and my wife was executed almost perfectly, from my point of view, and perhaps from the point of view of some of the other cast members. The problem for me was that I was watching their forced acting while trying to maintain the pretense for the director. I came to the conclusion that there were two different levels of acting going on. I also wanted, with all my being, not to believe it. Maria finally got out of her depression. I sure as hell hoped it had something to do with Matthew's birth. To say that Maria has been noticeably distracted over the past 8 months would be an understatement. Most of the time, she was on edge. Hormones and at least a half dozen other legitimate reasons could be the cause or part of the cause, but I still had to consider the possibility that it might be what I was afraid of. To say I was stressed after Matthew was born would be an understatement. We did not immediately find a common language. As I read about something wrong, it was just a feeling inside me, but I had a terrible feeling that something was wrong. In those first weeks when Maria stayed home with Matthew, she would call me on FaceTime, and I would get the same feeling. He didn't look like me, but he was a newborn. It was something else, perhaps emptiness. When I was alone in my trailer at night, I thought about who Matthew was like. I had to suppress these thoughts for my own peace of mind. We ordered from the delivery menu. She must have been hungry after the scene with Duck, but I didn't think I could eat much, so I ordered an Italian sandwich and pasta salad. On the way back to the hotel, Maria said almost nothing. She was clearly deep in thought. Honey, she began, should we call the realtor and withdraw the offer on Malibu Heights? We have no idea how this will affect our immediate future. At first glance, this might seem like a sensitive issue, but I knew Maria well enough to know that she was being selfish. After all, she was a product of her own upbringing. I simply answered, maybe, at least she could tell that I had a lot on my plate and left it at that. Back at the hotel, I took a quick shower while Maria headed to Starbucks in the lobby. The next surprise of the day came when I sat down to eat the sandwich that had been delivered to me and opened the sealed script. The caramel macchiato I was holding hit the opposite wall, spilling its hot sticky contents across the ivory white upholstery of the expensive armchairs directly below it. The sandwich, although tasty, was not wrapped very tightly and began to fall apart even as it left my outstretched hand. A variety of cold cuts, shredded lettuce, and cheese covered the distance to the elusive goal. Maria recoiled and stared at me in shock. Should I even open mine? She asked with trepidation. She never got an answer because my phone was on and I was dialing S on the speed dial. S. I shouted in tension. What the hell is this? Calm down, Chase, he replied as if expecting my call. This is exactly what it sounds like, and before you go on a tirade, you need to understand that I did this for you, at least partially. It won't be clear tomorrow or in the days to come, but I guarantee you will see it in your near future, and you will call to thank me. So, don't screw it up by missing out on this call. What does this even mean? I asked, resigned to the fact that S had laid it all out, preempting me as usual. I can't tell, S said in a quieter voice. Not now. You just have to trust me. I have your best interests at heart, and not because I'm your white knight. You are a natural talent, and I'm already looking forward to the next project we will be involved in together. Now, calm down, eat something, and read these lines so that tomorrow you can nail them down like your life depends on it. In a sense, this is true. S hung up, and Maria was next to me in an instant. I wish I could say she was there to comfort me, but I was still holding the script in my hands, and she was eagerly trying to read it. About 4 paragraphs later, she saw the words that prompted me to call, and her face turned ashen. What did he say? She asked, uncertainty lacing her voice. He said, deal with it, I growled. What an oxymoron. You better open yours. Maria did just that, and if up to that moment the mood was gloomy, then after that, we found ourselves in uncharted waters. The final scenes, originally conceived by the script and announced as a kind of duel between Jan and Sven for Lara's heart, turned around 180 degrees. Lara tells Sven that the child is his, but then one of the minor female characters, who has her eye on John, overhears and denounces the pair of adulterers. John confronts Sven in an angry but not very prepared way and gets a beating from his larger, stronger lover. In the final scene, John cries and whines about his unfaithful wife while sitting on the highest point of the island just before he jumps off and commits suicide. My character was essentially emasculated, and the only option was to accept it. Then I had to play it with amazing precision. I felt that my heart would not be in it as I began to come to terms with the next 24 hours. I began to learn a little about my wife. I realized that she was behaving unusually. She had been acting strange all day, going through a range of emotions. "What happened, Maria?" I asked, a little annoyed. Lara seems to be coming out of the situation much better than Jan. Maria looked up and smiled faintly. "I don't know, Chase," she replied thoughtfully. "I think this whole thing sucks. Who the hell writes this expletive, anyway? I don't think any of the characters will appear in a good light. A bunch of obsessive, self-centered narcissists and a dead main character." Mary had a knack for saying the obvious. Was she worried about her career or mine? I wasn't sure of either, judging by the range of emotions crossing her upset but pretty face. "I don't see anything here where Lara jumps off a cliff or sacrifices her cheated 5th place to the volcano gods or anything like that," I told her sarcastically. "Why would she do that?" Maria asked, looking puzzled. "She made a mistake. Her punishment will be her dead husband, but the audience will never see it, so it will be empty." "Holiness to hell with this," I answered incredulously. "She is intimate with Sven and then gives birth to his child." "No, Chase," she said sadly and softly. "You know that according to the script, they only had a night once. She regrets this and should have asked John for forgiveness in season 3. Here, after Lara finds out that her conversation with Sven was transferred to Jan, she goes in search of him to explain everything, but it is too late." Certainly, that was my eloquent answer from my gloomy answer. Maria realized that it was better to end everything there. We were both sitting in the same room, but that evening, we were as separated as a couple could be, lost in our thoughts and exploring our new lines. Maria ran her hands seductively over my chest as we settled into bed. She had her own way of calming me down with slow, loving intim or a quick romp. However, the day took its toll, and Remington Steele, as we called it, was not ready for this night. "Come on, baby," Maria whispered to me. "Mommy is still on edge. Do you want me back?" "Yeah, just like that." Mr. Steele will go on the Concorde to Heath THR for a woman as smart as I thought Maria was, and assuming this was an attempt at humor, she clearly lacked brains when it came to her hubby's masculinity and pride. "Sorry, baby," I told her, feigning compassion. "You can try, but I doubt HEK be willing to comply." She actually tried it for about 2.5 minutes, then she shrugged and rolled over, probably expecting me to hold her more comfortably. The next morning, of course, I was not very rested and not in the best shape. Maria was also not in a good mood. She usually had her own ways of getting me out of depression, but in the last few days, she couldn't do it. She looked, was it sympathy or concern? She tried to make small talk on the way from the hotel to the set. I answered in monosyllables. On the way to the dressing room, she started playing a Maria Chase face. She began in a soothing voice, "Just try harder today, honey. We'll get through this. In a month, you'll sign a new contract, and this stupid little show will be a thing of the past. Let's finish and go home to be with our baby." Maria went to her trailer, and I went to mine. 40 minutes later, we were together again, watching my stunt double fight another stunt double playing Sven. Anyone with even a few years of Hollywood experience could tell that this whole fight scene was rushed. I didn't see him, but Duck snuck up behind Maria and me and suddenly shouted to the director, to film. "What kind of amateurish crap is this?" He muttered, dissatisfied, "You call this a fight?" Damn it, he wasn't wrong. But then he made the mistake of his life. "Why don't you let Chase and me go in there?" he said to everyone who could hear. The script says beating. I'll show you what a damn good beating looks like. Then he looked straight at me and grinned. I first met Duck a week before we started reading lines for the show. Although he was never a good friend, Duck and I were friends. Maria and I went out for drinks with him and his then-girlfriend before Maria was pregnant. I helped him after his car was totaled by a friend he lent it to, picking him up for 2 weeks straight and taking him to the studio with us. For this, Duck bought Maria and me a weekend trip to Catalina Island. He was, of course, a self-centered and overweight Scandinavian, but he also had a kind side that sometimes showed. He was a bull in a china shop and proud of it. If it weren't for that smirk, all the strange feelings I'd been experiencing lately would never have come together. Not my wife's behavior, not all those whispers and interrupted conversations of my fellow actors. When Maria was home with our newborn, suddenly her strange looks from the previous day were right on par with Duck's smirk. I tried with every fiber of my being to brush it aside, to push it aside like on the island of despair, but I could not. I turned away from him, glancing in the opposite direction. Maria looked at me worriedly, perhaps desperately would be a better word, and then gave Duck an angry look. I hardly remember the rest of that day. Several times my scene on the mountaintop was cut off and started again. I was neither sharp nor focused. Of course, I had less than 12 hours to memorize my lines for the final episode. My final scene took place at sunset on top of an island rock, which in reality, to me, was a green screen on top of a plastic mountain about 2 meters high, with a soft elastic material around the base. I didn't dive like a swan. The managers decided that I should just feel sorry for myself and then just roll over. I found the ending of this show so disgusting that I could barely say goodbye to the cast and crew and just told the leaders to go to hell. Maria constantly poked me in the ribs and whispered, "Damn, Chase, you're embarrassing me." What the hell happened? While the rest of the crew wished each other well and hugged each other, I headed towards the taxi service outside the set. Duck came up to me as I was leaving after filming the final scene. He pulled my hand. "Chase," he said apologetically. "Hey, kid, great job. Sorry for what I said earlier. You know, it's just that my big mouth and temper got in my way. Don't be offended. I didn't mean anything like that. Why don't you and Maria catch me later in the week, and we can have dinner?" "Nope," I replied sarcastically. "I think we're fine as is now that the show is over. We have a baby at home to spend time with. Good luck." I never shook his hand, and Maria looked puzzled until the shuttle took us back to our car at the hotel. Then, apparently, she decided that anything she said would go wrong, so I was treated in silence the rest of the way to the airport. When we arrived home 7 hours later, I spoke with our nanny and discussed changes to the schedule for the next few weeks. Then I walked into the nursery, and Maria was breastfeeding Matthew. It's amazing how much a baby's appearance changes in the first few months. His mother spent the first 3 weeks with him. I hadn't seen him except for a few minutes on FaceTime for 5.5 weeks. I studied that little face. He certainly had his mother's looks, chiseled cheekbones, and blue eyes, but I had brown eyes. So what were the odds? Matthew's hair was blonde like Maria's. Another person who had blonde hair and blue eyes was Duck. I wanted to leave. I wanted to go and buy myself a double helping of Maker's Mark and forget this whole shitty week. I wanted to, but I couldn't. I slowly looked down at little Matthew's feet. They were real oars, amazingly huge for a newborn, and he had gnarled fingers. My legs were thin, and I wore a size 41.2. I had long, thin fingers, you know, the ones with extra knuckles, just like Maria. We'd been barefoot on set for over 2 years now. I'm not a Bigfoot person, but when you're sitting at lunch or on a technical break, it's hard not to notice that everyone is working in swimsuits. That evening, Maria went to bed long before me. She was exhausted, or so she said. I was drunk. My wife wanted to talk the next morning, without even giving me a chance to be hungover. She wanted to help me get over the shock of the show and everything that happened. I told her that I was fine and didn't need her help. She got a little angry at my attitude and decided to take offense, saying that she was just trying to help and I shouldn't be so insensitive. That was until I left her. She followed me to my Maserati and demanded that I come back to the house and spend time with her and Matthew. For the first time in our marriage, I disobeyed. "Leave me alone," I raged. Instead, I went to breakfast and ate a lot of bacon. Thoughts about my Hollywood figure were not on the agenda that day. I started making important notes on my phone, then emailed them to my personal account and erased them from my phone. In my opinion, there was no point in getting ahead of myself until one very important thing had been proven. That thing was Matthew's ancestry, and it required a smear test. No, 2 tests. One for him and one for me. The evidence had to be irrefutable. In any case, that is, whether he was my son or not. Just one day after I woke up, I was already opening my mind to the fact that Maria could have become pregnant by practically anyone. If I were the father, then at least Maria would have to admit her relationship with Duck Bronson, depending on how bad it was. I would have to make my own decisions. Maybe we would go to counseling, or maybe something more permanent. But if I wasn't the father, I needed to start defending myself now. My career depended on it. Hollywood mogul scandals in this business can sometimes be good for your career, but after Despair Island ended, I would have been a laughingstock. However, contracts were also an important part of Hollywood. My marriage to Maria was truly a contract. I made a note to use this word to the end in all my transactions. This also meant that I would have to find a good lawyer. The second, and perhaps more serious, problem was Maria's family. Moreover, the wealth and power of her father, Charles Wilmington. This guy had always been partial to me. This was partly due to the fact that he despised the idea of his daughter becoming an actor or artist of any kind. He considered fine art completely useless for society. He considered me the same. In short, he made no effort to hide his complete contempt for me and often tried to control my words and actions. In return, he received my middle finger and an equal challenge. He had a commanding presence, but I had a quick mind that he simply could not match, which irrevocably brought us to a permanent impasse. So, I decided that I would do everything to mitigate any public shame for Maria, while he used his power to publicly destroy me. But he was also an option for further developments. I would begin preparing my own anti-PR campaign, and if necessary, name him. My phone rang, and I saw it was S. I thought about sending it to voicemail, but maybe. "Hey, S," I said, "Stoy, what can I do for you?" "I guess that's more like what I can do for you, my boy," he said with a deep grin. "Stop by the studio, okay? There's a package for you on my table. Just tell my administrative assistant who you are, and she'll get it for you. I don't think the content needs any explanation, but you know how to contact me if you have questions or want to talk. All the best." It was S, so unique. However, it was quite an ominous conversation, and my curiosity was piqued. So off I went to the studio. 45 minutes later, I received my studio bonus. According to my early withdrawal clause, there was an 11 by 14-inch poster of the cast and crew of Despair Island, autographed, of course. Then, I think there was another extra bag that I dropped into my lap. There were 2 DNA swab tests lying there, and I suffocated. Was he really controlling my smartphone? I asked myself a question. My quick return call to S went straight to voicemail, which was normal. I went to the bank and spent an hour setting up a new account and transferring a... Please don't shut me out. I know this must be hard for you. I'm supposed to be here for you. I'm your wife, remember? I did remember, and it also seemed strange to me that there was not a single affectionate word in her sentence. This made me remember the recent past. How long has this been going on? I asked myself a question. "And you love me," I said instead of asking, actually finishing her sentence for her. "Yes," she answered perplexedly, perhaps puzzled by my answer. "Of course, I love you. Are you worried about this? About my love for you, I mean? Well, it's not worth it. Do not dare, whether you are a working actor or an unemployed actor, it has nothing to do with my love to me." I did it again. The questioning look disappeared, replaced by a tense, worried one. "What do you mean?" she asked, starting to defend herself. "I just said it. My love for you." "God, Chase, what's gotten into you? I mean, I know what's going on, but I've never seen you like this the last 2 days. Talk to me, please." I didn't want to overact. Everything must happen in order. I took a deep breath. I'm very sorry, I said calmly. I just didn't expect anything like this. Not the show, not S, not that idiot duck. Her eyebrows rose, even as she tried to hide it. That ending was the worst of all. My chances of getting any future roles like Tom Cruise just decreased exponentially, while my chances of getting future roles like Danny DeVito increased greatly in one damn day. They basically made my character into a cuckolded weakling, and then I had to play it. I really think you should call your realtor tomorrow and put the finishing touches on the house in Malibu. This also caught Maria's attention and gave me the perfect opportunity to leave the first part of my rant. She thought about my proposal and became sad. I know, she said dejectedly. Do you have any ideas for something new? Did you call your agent today? No, Maria, I answered rudely. I needed a day, okay? Just one day to think it over. Of course, I will call him. Maybe tomorrow. The rest of our night was at least civil, but neither of us took a step closer to intimacy. The next morning, as I was getting out of the shower, S sent me a text. I think I'll need to change the password on my phone today, he simply wrote. You called. Maria was breastfeeding, and I told her that I needed to go to the studio, maybe talk to S, but also pick up a package there. Then I went to my agent. I hated to lie like that, but I had to, I said. Hey, S, what's the news? I used one of his semi-famous euphemisms. Oh, I think you already know, S chuckled again. Look, I'm not a good Samaritan, just to be clear. I have a new role lined up for you if you're interested. It's on the drawing board now. The full writing team hasn't even been hired yet, but the idea is solid. In order for me to bring you on board, we're going to have to shed the skin of this island fiasco, erase your status as a blockhead. Got it? That's exactly what I did. So, how did you know? I asked sharply. There was laughter on the phone again. I never said I learned anything, my boy, he said cheerfully. Actually, I didn't do it, not directly. I think what you're really asking is when. I didn't answer, and he continued. I learned about this from rumors. You should know this by now. If George Burns turns over in his grave, I'll know, my boy. I've been working in this town since Sidney Poitier and John Wayne were box office hits. What I can tell you is that I didn't hear anything until Maria became pregnant, 2, maybe 3 months later. I can't tell if it's because Duck can't keep his mouth shut or because your wife has the same leg problem. Hell, I can't say for sure if they ever made a horizontal mambo. But I need my boy Chase back in the game for this new role, so you'll have to figure that out and take care of business. You know what I always say, a boa constrictor in a fist is like 2 on a tree. S was very, very good at all those timeless sayings. He was almost a prophet in our industry, at least that's what he told anyone and everyone who would listen. So, you heard it was him? I said, when S interrupted me. Of course, it was him. Now he became more and more pompous and angrier. Who do you think it was? Listen, you stupid, this girl loves you. But a freak like Bronson will keep working and working on a woman, any woman, until he gets what he wants. God, how I hate that Danish idiot. If I have my way, the only 2 lines in his future will be to use that stupid accent to say kitchen sorted in an ad for Booking.com. I imagine the redness seeping in, starting from the sides of S's face. This man had terrible blood pressure, he simply continued. Have you done the test? He asked impatiently. How long will it take to get results? I told S for a week or 2. He got angry again when I told him that I used my home address to send the results. He told me to call his administrator and tell her the name of the lab, and she would change it to studio. He then talked about the new show Family Matters, based on a real-life good guy, a family law attorney who has done his best to get justice in family court. In the past, he did all this out of the kindness of his big heart and, of course, for the sake of self-respect. I will be playing the lead role, Dalton Roberts, LLDD-esque. I was already mentally figuring out how to convince him to soften the tone of these letters for the sake of the audience. S was right, that's how he usually was, as I learned. I needed to get out from under this disgusting despair island. I asked if he knew a good divorce lawyer, and of course, he did. I told him I'd call him as soon as we hung up to start researching the role. He didn't buy it. S must have been on the phone with Stony Mayer while I was talking to the secretary. While I was making an appointment, I was transferred to Mr. Mayer and told to come at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Stony was good, despite his ridiculous name. He laid out the whole point and asked what I wanted to do. Anyway, if the DNA testing was completed, he mentioned that he knew Mary's father, Charles Wilmington. He also told me that Charles could cause a lot more problems than I thought, but he could have buried Duck Bronson, making him out to be a vile Hollywood misogynist and predatory womanizer. The more serious issue was Mary herself. I have no desire to destroy her, I said, surprisingly without emotion. If she had a one-time relationship with him, as a result of which she became pregnant, then she can simply move on with Duck if that is what she wants. If she's been dating him this whole time, or she wants to fight it, then you can go for the jugular. Okay, we'll figure it out, he said, smiling. The wheels were turning in his head. Celebrity divorce takes 3.5 minutes, tops, on TMZ. If they want to mess with us, then we will spoon-feed them an affair with a celebrity, then whoever it was on the same set, and an illegitimate child. It's a gift that keeps on giving. Then he restrained himself. I sincerely hope that the boy is yours, and that the rumors are just rumors. In any case, leave a check for $1,650 with my secretary on the way out. Over the next week, an uncomfortable relationship developed between Maria and me. She was quiet, wary, and it didn't give me peace. We still did what had always made us a strong couple, but it was superficial at best. We played with the child, we discussed our day, I talked about my agent and a few leads, but I never discussed the role S wanted for me. We also had intimate 3 times that week, to be exact. It was as forced and faked as everything else we did. We both climaxed, but then again, we're both damn good actors. 8 days later, as I was leaving a strategy meeting with my agent, I received a call from S. I heard his assistant nearby. Chase, he began quickly, your results are here. I could hear a woman talking furiously in the background, possibly on another phone. She was very animated. Are you alone in your office? I asked. I heard shuffling and the sound of a door closing. Yes, he answered seriously. Can I open them? I would prefer, he cut me off. There's no time, he said urgently. Damn, Chase, we have a bigger problem here. My assistant or the lab screwed up. The written report was mailed here, but another copy was also sent to your home. Maria called here 3 times today looking for you. I think you should open them before you end up in a pile of crap at home. Do it. There was the sound of paper being torn, then a long pause. Come on, you old idiot, I thought. The sigh confirmed what I feared before he said a word. Matthew, he is not your son. I'm sorry, my boy. I don't remember if I said thank you. I don't remember how I got home. I certainly didn't notice the 2 luxury cars in our large driveway, at least not until I got out of the car and walked past them. One of the cars belonged to Duck Bronson, the other was a city car. Seeing her there was unpleasant because it probably meant that Maria's parents were inside too. They were there, all gathered in the living room. Mother Mary was not among them. They stood when I entered and looked weary. Maria made no move to meet me. I stood in the lobby and took it all in. Then I laughed, half fake and half real, as I walked into my home. Our whole life is a theater, I began in my mocking medieval voice. In it, there are women, men, all actors. I looked around the room, then the kitchen and the hallway. Charles had so much money that he always needed personal security. They had their own exits and entrances. I continued, looking into his eyes, and everyone plays more than one role. He rolled his eyes at me. Duck looked dumbfounded. I thought Shakespeare was from his continent. I saw only pain in Maria's eyes, so I focused on her. Where are you from? I asked. An otter appeared in the air in front of me. I asked her in my usual tone, you handle address to me. Maria knew this phrase well. Tears began to roll down her swollen cheeks. Sit down, actor, Charles demanded. Ah, I said sarcastically. It makes sense. Is Dad here to take control of the situation, damage control, right? "Be careful, Chuck, I am not one of your subordinates or stooges." He didn't answer. The seating order was not very well thought out. Charles realized he was sitting in my chair and pointed to it, then crossed the room and pulled an elegantly upholstered chair towards him, rather dragged it, and placed himself in the chair between me and the two lovers. We were all just waiting for him to start. "Here," he said, pointing to the envelope on the coffee table, "is the post-nuptial agreement, more precisely, the clause on amendments to your marriage vows. It's heavily weighted in your favor. If you're smart, you'll listen to what Mr. Bronson and Maria have to say, and then you'll sign it. To make a decision, you will need a very short period of time, approximately until I leave here. If you choose not to listen to reason, I am ready to take Maria and my grandson out this door, and my media campaign will begin immediately. Highlights: you are lost, confused, angry at the sudden end of your work, at the sudden revelation about Maria and Mr. Bronson, and of course about Matthew. That you became unstable, threatened to hurt Maria, hurt her, since the last shoot, started taking pills again." He saw the offended expression on my face. "I know, well, I think I know you don't like it, but I will use any means necessary to protect my little girl and our family's reputation. You may get a few minor slaps on the wrist if you fight me in the court of public opinion, but I guarantee I will destroy you. You understood me." "It's strange that they somehow got ahead of me," was my first thought. However, I was confident in the truth and had good people on my side. It wouldn't hurt to listen to this little performance, but how did they do it? "Okay," I shrugged, "let them continue whatever it is." Charles looked at his daughter and Bronson, waving his open palm for them to begin. Duck started talking, and I immediately interrupted him. "Shut up, sit down, and let my wife tell me. You'll have a chance, maybe." Maria looked more excited than I had ever seen her, even on our wedding day. She continued to nervously twirl her clasped hands. Finally, she stopped and looked at me. "Chase," she began, "I'm really, really sorry this happened. This shouldn't have happened." I rolled my eyes, and she realized she had already failed. My wife took a deep breath and tried again. "Okay, no cliches," she said. "I screwed up. Dak and I started talking, then became friends, and then, well, then you were out of town. Remember that week when you had to go to the island and reshoot those 2 scenes? I was at home, and Duck invited me to dinner. He said he didn't want me to be all alone." She caught her father shaking his head and rolling his eyes. "It's quite difficult, Daddy," she had admonished him. I know I was stupid. Just let me talk to Chase. In any case, she continued, completely unsettled, we drank wine, danced. God, I know how ridiculous that sounds, especially now that I'm saying it out loud. Chase, I love you. This has never changed. I was drunk, I barely remember it. It is not your fault, honestly. It's not even his fault, although he had a hand in it. This triggered a mental image, and I almost lost my lunch on our expensive rug. Charles, for all his bravado about status, at least had the common sense as a man to apologize and return with a cool, wet towel. I accepted it. Okay, let's skip all this nonsense, I said with disgust. Did he breed you here in our bed? Maria choked back a heavy sob, receiving a harder slap from my words than my hand could ever give. No, she answered dejectedly, we rented a hotel room across the street from a dance club in Santa Monica. Yeah, I laughed out loud. He didn't want to miss out on an easy prey who happened to be involved in this accident, and he didn't want to let you sober up so much that you chicken out. Then Charles attacked him. Enough, Chase, she screwed up, no one can deny that. I raised an eyebrow, and he simply turned back to his daughter. It was just one time, Chase, she was speaking slurred, and now she was crying a lot. I was so excited when I found out that I was pregnant. At my first appointment, when Dr. Fielding said that I was 3 months pregnant, not 2, I was confused. When I started counting in the car, I was devastated. I knew it was while I was with Duck. You were gone for 4 days, and on the 5th, you arrived so late that you went straight to bed. It was terrible. I hoped and prayed that Matthew would be ours, so I could put this nightmare behind me. This doesn't sound right at all, I said coldly. It sounds like you would never have told me about your little indiscretion, and you certainly didn't when Matthew was born. You should have known. I've heard that women have a nose for such things. You were just going to let me raise that idiot's child. For a moment, no one had anything to say as I collected my thoughts. I realized that Duck was trying to say something, and to be honest, I could barely look at Maria, the woman who had broken my heart in so many ways. "Come on, you idiot," I said, looking at the idiot. "I see you have something to say." But Duck was not used to all this. He had all the impudence and arrogance of a typical Scot, big, bold, and selfish. This was his usual behavior on and off stage. "She's too kind," he said. "Of course, it's partly her fault. After all, she was a little drunk. But I started working with her long before that night, on set, off set, and I always got my way." I jumped out of my seat as if stung. That damned old man, Wilmington, was a gazelle for his age when he tried to stop my fist from hitting Bronson in the face. Between my anger and the two of them, I never landed a hit, but I'm sure I made the video the highlight of our home security system. I immediately knew where Charles's thugs were hiding. That's not what I learned, but that they were fast as lightning getting from there to here. A bone-mutilating hand gripped my shoulder tightly. Duck got the worst of it as goon number 2 threw him into a chair and then slapped him across the face to calm him down. Bronson looked shocked. His gaze moved from the thug to Maria, to Charles, and then to me. "Chase," he said emotionally, and then began to cry. "I'm sorry. I never wanted any of this crap, he pointed at Charles, or a child, none of that. "Okay," I thought with my little head. "I never thought about the consequences. I'm really sorry. But, Chase, listen, old man, I want to make things right." "And how?" I asked amused. "I will cry," he yelled. "All our lives are on the line. You know what scandal does to celebrities. I will pay child support until Matthew turns 18. I'll pay for everything you think he needs, but you don't want to pay for. Hell, I'll even pay for college. Just take her back, man. I know it's a lot to ask, raising someone else's child, but you know you already love this baby, you're already attached. He'll never know who I am unless you two decide to tell him. I won't even talk to him. In his eyes, you will be his father. Anything else you both want too. If we ruin our images, our careers will go down the drain. I don't know about you two, but I need this lifestyle and money." He was pathetic. Charles supported him so much in the time that passed before I arrived, and now this big loser is already broken down. I looked at Maria with a raised eyebrow. She instantly understood what I wanted to say non-verbally. I let Bronson relax and looked straight at my wife. "You know," I said, and then started again, "you know all this won't bring back my love for you, right? I hope you have already explained this to Daddy. Are you suggesting that we raise this child in a home without love or affection just to save face? You understand this, right?" To my surprise, Maria nodded affirmatively. "I understand," she answered sadly and quietly. "This is only until we establish ourselves and our careers. Look, Chase, divorce in Hollywood is like sprinkles on ice cream. It's always there, and people are waiting for it. You need a new job. I need her too, but not now, when Matthew is still a baby. I don't expect anything from you in private, only in public, the performance of a lifetime if you like. It's all in Dad's post-contract. You can discreetly date whoever you want, and I can too, for intimate release. I won't be against you at home. I will treat you exactly the same as always. By the way, this will not be acting. I love you, and I regret that I ruined our lives, both. I won't dwell on it or get my hopes up, but part of me will always fantasize about the day when, instead of handing me divorce papers, you tell me that you forgive me." The worst thing about this farce was that Maria seemed sincere. What a pity, I thought. I realized that someday I might even forgive her, but I would never stay with her. I took the envelope and began to look through the documents inside. If Maria had gone out with a man, any man, for an intimate without informing me, I could have started divorce proceedings. If she gets caught by the paparazzi or her indiscretions become public knowledge, same thing. In any case, financial affairs were working out in my favor. I looked at Maria, then at Charles. Why are there so many sections about her infidelity? I asked, amused. Why not write something legal about keeping her legs closed? This angered Charles, but he was in business mode. That's what all these points are about, he answered decisively. Same for you. Whether you and her ever make peace is of no concern to me. I don't care, and I hope you don't either. It's about reputation, mostly mine, but yours too. This is also an opportunity, a chance to deal with the consequences of her actions, a chance to learn how to raise a child properly. And trust me, if one of you screws up, I'll step in with some favors from one of my judge friends, and I'll take Matthew away. Otherwise, the child will be 12 years old, and you can both go your separate ways. Either way, he pointed at Duck, he will pay for Matthew. He already knows what will happen if he misses even 1 month. Maria, I suddenly said, how did you manage to organize all this? This was definitely not done within a few hours of receiving the test results. I could see it, Chase, she said, this with finality. You suspected even that last day on the island, every day after that, you just moved away from me. God, I literally felt the love melting inside of you. I didn't have time to think. I had nothing to think about. I kept thinking about the steps I had already taken and which ones Charles had forestalled. I didn't have much choice if I was going to launch a counteroffensive, and I was. Then it had to be a new battle. I've already lost Maria's story. After our meeting ended, I went and spent the rest of the day with my son. I needed this myself, but I also could not bear to meet my husband. Chase was an incredible man, the only man I could see myself with long term, and I ruined what we had. Conversely, I knew I had to follow through for Matthew's sake. I didn't have fantasies about reconciling with Chase, no stupid plans to stun him, but there was no way I was going to humiliate myself. I didn't have any half-baked ideas. I wasn't stupid. I grew up in high society, among the smartest people in America. Dad owned 27 factories between western Ohio and eastern Pennsylvania. He owned 7 high-rise buildings in Manhattan, real estate or brick buildings in almost every country on both American continents. He also had a lot of people. As soon as I suspected that Chase might know something, I called my father. Within a few hours, he had a whole team of people dedicated to him. Of course, working on a solution to the problem. Most likely these were his trusted legal and PR teams. By the end of that day, after dozens of text messages sent back and forth, he had helped me out of a potentially disastrous situation. Damage control at its best, and certainly what I expected from my father. After all, he deserved it. He built an empire for his family. I always counted on my dad from as early as I could remember. Even as a student, I realized that most rich were too snobby or rather pretentious and ridiculously narcissistic. When Chase Burroughs made a surprise visit to our first film class at UCLA, I was beside myself with excitement and lust. After class, he stayed and signed a few autographs. When his eyes met mine, he too seemed to be struck on the spot. I almost fainted when he invited me for coffee. For us, this was the beginning. The fact that Chase was only 3 years older than me was a surprise and a plus for me. The affair was hot and heavy, and I was in a starry sky. My father, not so much. Just as he planned everything else, my father also had a plan for me in my life. He didn't expect me to be so intractable. Perhaps it was my DNA that contributed to my stubbornness in living the life I wanted. It was I who directed the marriage train, making subtle hints at every step. I overdramatized my interest in the Desolation Island script and how much I wanted to be part of a show like that. The baby was Chase's idea, and I reluctantly agreed. As much as I loved Chase and wanted with every fiber of my being to grow old with him and bear him more children in the future, I had to admit that I had a character flaw. I loved attention, simple and clear, from both men and women. I thrived on it. As for women, envy has always driven me crazy. That's why I always tried to dress up better than all the other women at the party. For men, it was more related to intimate attention, the tense, thick air as I stand in a group and talk, knowing that a cute guy is fantasizing in great detail about what he would do to me at this moment if we were alone. And of course, the occasional soft, quick touch on some guy's arm or hand, and then I try to figure out if it was intentional or not. The differences between my lack and my love were clear. When Duck first attacked me, I brushed him off with the ease that had become familiar to me since my breasts grew, but he continued, and this, in itself, fueled my desire. At some point, the dance turned into night tension, an itch that I desperately wanted to scratch. In the end, I allowed myself to be seduced by him and used him to satisfy my burning need. So the question remained, could I ever be a good and faithful wife to Chase or anyone else? It was a big question without an answer, a question I couldn't answer with complete certainty. This means that I had to play the combination that I got, no, the combination I chose myself. I did it. Now I was determined to be a good mother to my son and a good wife to my husband for as long as he lived with me. I didn't expect it to be very long, but I hoped the pain would subside, and we'd all be in a better place when he finally decided to end it. If he played the victim after what we proposed or couldn't bring himself to have a night with me anymore, then I would probably go on dates with Duck from time to time. Hell, I probably would have had a few more dates with the hot actors I now knew. Continued in the next video. Subscribe to the channel and click on the bell so you don't miss the second final part. The link to the second part will be in the description of this video below. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story because this story is nothing compared to the next one. What do you think of our first part of the story? As for me, the first part was only the beginning of the end. I think that the most interesting will be in the second part. Hopefully there will be an interesting revenge on his wife or divorce, the outcome of which she does not expect. What's your opinion on the first part? Write in the comments. Until the next part.